Hey everybody. First we'll do a special welcome for MTA. New people coming here. All right, for the Australians, this is my didgeridoo imitation. Traditional Aboriginal instrument. For the South Africans, I believe this is the unofficial anthem of the entire continent of Africa. Samina Mina AA Waka Waka AA. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the Cameroonian language, that means come do it. And therefore, what I wanted to talk to you about this week is what I understand to be the 7 tips or the 7 habits to have a very, very good year at Midreshet Harova. Now, first I'll tell you a midrash. You know, there's a famous midrash in this week's parsha that says that before giving the Torah, Hashem went to all of the other nations, yes? Hashem goes over to Ammon and Moab and says, Ammon and Moab, do you want the Torah? And Ammon and Moab say, oh Hashem, so what's in the Torah? And what does Hashem say? Well, it says in the Torah, lo tinaf, you can't commit adultery, there's all these things that are prohibited with relations. And they say, look, Ammon and Moab, we're from Lot and his daughters, we can't be part of this because that's our whole thing, that's where we came from. They say we can't accept the Torah. Then Hashem goes over to Yishmael, and he says, Yishmael, do you want the Torah? And what does Yishmael say? Listen, what does it say in the Torah? Hashem says, yeah, it says you're not allowed to steal. And Yishmael says, but that's our whole thing. It says, Pera Adam, we're going to be wild, we steal, that's what we do. So they don't want the Torah either. Then Hashem goes over to Esav. He says, Esav, you want the Torah. Esav says, what's in the Torah? And Hashem says, listen, it says in here, Lo tirtzach, don't kill. And Esav says, but that's it, I'm a bloody guy, I'm a hunter, that's what I do, I kill, can't accept the Torah. Hashem goes to the Jewish people say, Naaseh v'nishma, we get the Torah. That's the famous midrash. But you know what's weird about that midrash? That it's kind of not fair. Because Hashem, with every other nation, he told them some kind of like Achilles heel thing that's going to be very, very hard for them to accept, to make it very difficult for them to accept the Torah. But what about the Jewish people? There's no, Achilles heel for them. So the Baruch Shamar explains that there is an Achilles heel for the Jewish people as well. And what is the Achilles heel for the Jewish people? What is the quality that the Torah says is the main character trait of the Jewish people? What does the Torah always call the Jewish people? What kind of a nation are the Jewish people? Am Kshei Oref, a stiff-necked people. And if they're a stiff-necked people, what do they never like? Anybody telling them what to do. So the entire Torah, as a set of rules for them to accept at all, for somebody, Hashem, telling them what to do at all, goes against their national character trait, which is not to listen to what anyone has to tell them. And therefore, by them saying Naaseh v'nishma, they overcame that fundamental character trait. And I know that there are people in this audience, even right now, when I said that I want to speak about this week, the 7 tips for a good year, I got from some people, they said, yeah, I don't want to hear your 7 tips for a good year. My year is halfway done already, and it's kind of too late for all that. I'm like, okay, that's classic Jewish people stuff. You don't want anyone to tell you anything. That's fair enough. But I'm going to tell you something. First of all, there's all the MTAs that they're all fresh and new. That's good. But I'll tell you another thing. When I was a kid and I went to high school, my high school was Yeshiva of Flatbush High School. This was a co-ed high school in Brooklyn, what had girls and boys in it. Yes? Okay. Now there was a Breslov guy who would come and hang out outside of my high school. And he had all of these pamphlets. And he said, and he would look up in the sky the whole time because he didn't want to look at any girls. He'd be like this, with pamphlets. That was nice. It was cool. And he says, if you give me any amount of money, you get a pamphlet. I'm like, whoa, I give you like 5 cents, I can get a pamphlet? He says, definitively. So I gave him, I gave him 10 cents because I was like going all out. And he gives me a pamphlet. And I read this pamphlet and I remember it to this very day. Now listen to what the name of this pamphlet was. It's a Matter of Time. And the whole pamphlet was telling you one teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And the teaching goes like this. The Jewish year, tell me, when is the beginning of the year for Jewish people? Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei. But what does the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah tell us? That the Rosh Hashanah for Jewish people, the way you count for kings, that's Nisan. So we got there's a Rosh Hashanah of Nisan, there's a Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei. Hey, and what do we have even just this week? There's a whole other Rosh Hashanah for trees, that's Tu B'Shvat. What does Rabbi Nachman say? The whole concept of a year, it's a human invention when to start a year. So when a person says, I'm having a bad year, or my year is just beginning now, that's a fiction. You made that up. There's all kinds of ways of calculating a year. You know that we have all kinds of ways of calculating a month too. You can have the Goyish month, that goes by the solar. You could have the Jewish month. Sometimes you could add a month, an extra Adar. You could have a 29-day month. You could have a 30-day month. We figure that kind of stuff out. What about a day? When does the day start? The night before? The next morning? What is Rabbi Nachman saying? Our concept of how we divide time, it's all in our heads. So when you say it's too late, he says, by definition, it's never too late. Because at any given moment, what could it be at any given moment? Now it is a beginning. If you're saying, I'm having a bad week, that's an illusion in your head. You could start right now and say, okay, now it's going to be good. I'm having a bad hour. You could say, I'm having a bad second. By the time you finish saying that, that second is over. Now you could have a good second. So therefore, I'm going to tell you that even all of you who were here a bit of time already, a little bit, you can start fresh at any given moment. What I call a hard reboot. You can just press that, I don't know, combination of buttons and start over at any given time. So let us go through the 7. These are the tips. Now I'm going to tell you something. If you don't follow these rules, are you still going to be a human being who's been to SEM for a year? Yes. But you will be, let's say it in a nice way, kind of a half schlepper, yes? Now, you know there's people what come back and they're alumni and they're like, my year. I had these kids a year or two ago. I remember those kids, you know, they get through it. But what we want to talk about here is not how to just get through it and cross that finish line and check that box, but how to have a good year. Number 1. How to have a good year? A, wake up early. Now listen to this. It says in Pirkei Avot that there were a few things. Rabbi Dosa ben Hurkanu says, there were a few things, he says there, shemotzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. What does that mean, motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam? It takes you away from this world. You miss out on this world if you do these things. Even Olam Hazeh, you miss out. Let's go simple. Of course, Olam Haba, there's going to be problems, but even simple Olam Hazeh. One of them, the first thing in the list, Sheina Shel Shacharit. What is Sheina Shel Shacharit? Sleeping in the morning. Now I know something. You guys are now on the cusp. You're kind of not full-grown adults yet, but you're not little kids yet either. And you're in this transitional place between being a little kid and a grown-up. And some of you I know are thinking, should I go to camp this summer? Because I'm still kind of a little kid. Maybe I can go to camp one more year. Or do I have to be a grown-up and get a real human job or whatever? But you're on the cusp. You're somewhere right there. I'm going to tell you something about little kids. You know what little kids love to do? They love to stay up late. But you know what grown-ups really do? Grown-ups wake up early. Now I'm going to tell you something. When I say wake up early, how early do you even have to wake up? You know what happens sometimes? You ever go to the Beit Midrash and you see these kids davening in the Beit Midrash? You see people saying they're doing shacharit during Beit Midrash time in the morning. You see that kind of stuff happens. Okay. You know what? It's better that they're davening than they're not davening at all. What time do you get to the Beit Midrash in the morning? I don't know. What is it, like 9:15 or something? I don't know. When is it that they have the first Beit Midrash time? Okay, 8:30. Davening at 8:30? Who davens at 8:30? If you're like a retiree or something, maybe I don't know, the prime minister or somebody like that. I don't know, like in the morning they're handling the world, they finally get a break a little bit. Who davens at 8:30 in the morning? No human being davens at 8:30 in the morning. Shabbos is Shabbos. Why? You know what? And how long does it even take when people sneak daven in the Beit Midrash during Beit Midrash time? How much time does it take? What is it, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that? On a good day, that's sneak davening. Why don't you just wake up 15 minutes or 20 minutes earlier and daven like a normal human being? I don't know where you want to daven, at the kotel or in your room or in some porch or some such thing. You do that, it's like a normal person. I'm going to tell you another thing. If you want to daven in a good way, tell me, what's the time differential between having a rushed, no kavana davening and between having a thoughtful kavana davening? Honestly, how much time is the differential between a good, thoughtful, real davening and a run-through, check-the-box davening? What is it going to be? 5 minutes is the difference? Not even. I'm going to say it could even be a 3-minute difference. Imagine if you have 3 minutes of kavana more in your Shmona Esrei than you have on a regular basis. 3 minutes is huge to add to a Shmona Esrei. I'm telling you, if you just wake up, whatever you're waking up now, add another 5 minutes to it, and you have a real deep dive davening from that 5 minutes, then go do that. You have the time, instead of staying up late, watching garbage, Vampire Diaries and all this other nonsense. So just wake up a little bit early and have a fresh start on the day. Now I'm going to tell you another thing about waking up. Hey, they used to have this kind of a poll that they said, what is the first thing human beings do when they wake up in the morning? Yes? For years, the number one thing, first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, number one thing in every poll for decades, go to the bathroom. That was number one. Wake up, that's what you do. But you know what happened in recent times? You know what took the number one slot? Check your phone. It beat out going to the bathroom. Now I'm going to tell you something. Jewish people, they never had either of those, right? You don't not go to the bathroom, not anything. What's the first thing Jewish people do? You wake up, you say Modeh, yeah? I'm going to tell you something. In the morning, if the first thing you do is reaching for that phone, just stop doing that. You understand what it means? I'll tell you something. Going to the bathroom, you could respect that. Because the person is saying, you know what? It's Gashmius. I'm a Gashmius person. I'm taking care of my body. That's the first thing I got to do. Jewish people say, we're not doing that. We do first thing is something spiritual. We do a little bit Modeh, then we're going to handle our physical stuff. But then if you have a phone, then where are you? Like, what are you even doing? What's the most important thing in your life? Not even your body, not Hashem, but in, whatever this third place, who even knows what that even represents? So I'm saying, start your morning right. Just make it a little bit earlier and have a good davening like a normal person, not sneaking in the Beit Midrash and not checking your phone first thing in the morning either. That's number one. All right. By the way, you check. I'll tell you something if you want to do this. You ask any of your teachers over here what time they wake up in the morning, you'll see this whole place is a bunch of crazy early risers. That's what it is. This whole place is that way. Number two is get out of your comfort zone. What does that mean? You have to understand that this Midreshet Harova environment is a super supportive environment. Each one of you has like an entire team of support staff. How is it that on the very first day of giving classes, some kid comes over to me and says, I have a mashkicha meeting in the middle of our first class? What does that mean? There's some person checking in on you to see how are you doing when you had about 45 minutes of class. That's what happened. Because you see, there's so many people, they're all concerned about you. Do you have these like check-ins with the administration every so often? Yeah, there's like some kind of a cycle. Besides the mashgichot, who you have those meetings with, and the, what do you call it? The madrichot, they take you, I don't know, wherever you need to go. They hold your hand to the doctor's office and all this kind of stuff. Whatever it is, what do they do? What do they bring you tea when you're sick and all this? How are you? You know, do you need a tissue or something? All of this kind of business, yes? You have so much support staff now. If you have so much support staff and you have such a supportive environment, you now can do anything ever that you were ever worried about or anxious about or scared about. You can do that now. This is your year to take care of all of those things. If you're a person that you're in some fashion nervous about public speaking, this is your time to deal with it and get over it. You're going to say to somebody, I don't know what, there's an In Shabbat coming up? Is there some person who's supposed to say a Dvar Torah or something? How does that work? Do they pick you or something? I'm telling you, if there's somebody in the audience now who's a bit nervous about public speaking, you get yourself up there and you go over to some teacher you like or some mashgicha person you like or whoever, and you say, you know what? I'd like to say a Dvar Torah this Shabbos too. There's always room for another Dvar Torah. They'll wedge you in somewhere, and you're going to say, but I'm nervous. Could you help me with this thing? What are they going to say to you? No, you're awful. You're just not cut out for public speaking. Just sit down and just be quiet. No one is going to tell that to you. They want to help you with that kind of stuff. So I'm telling you, anything on your list that you're ever wanted to ever take care of, and I'm saying that this is in a Torah way, in a religious way, or even something personal that you had some kind of a concern about, you take care of it now because there's a zillion people that want to help you out. Now I'm going to tell you something. You know what? I'll tell you a story about a Midreshet Harova student that I had a bit of time ago. One time, I don't know how this came up. I was talking to this student, and she mentioned, I said, do you have family in Israel? And she says, yeah, I have a grandfather in Israel, Zaidi. Zaidi lives in Israel. I said, hey, so do you spend time with Zaidi? She says, no, I don't talk to Zaidi at all. She says, in fact, I haven't seen Zaidi in about 10 to 15 years. The last time Zaidi saw me, I was a tiny little kid. I said, how is this even possible that Zaidi hadn't seen you in so long? She says, you know what happened? Zaidi is her father's father. And her father and Zaidi, they don't really get along so much. So since her father doesn't get along with Zaidi, she kind of has no connection with Zaidi. Zaidi lives in Israel. All of his kids live in America. And he lives in Israel in some kind of assisted living, nursing home kind of business. He's an old guy. I said, you're telling me you have a living grandfather and you're like a fully grown human and you have no relationship with this person? This is an impossibility. I will tell you something. Are there people here in the audience that you're fully grown the way you are, that you have living grandparents and you have a relationship with them? You know how special it is to have a relationship with a grandparent as a fully grown person who can talk to them and be a person with them. And you know how much your grandparents love you so much and they just want to talk to you all the time and tell you the same stories 18 times and all that kind of stuff. Your grandparents love you so much. You know that. I told her, you go to Zaidi and you go visit this Zaidi. She's like, I don't know. I haven't talked to him. He hasn't seen me in more than 10 years. How am I going to go to him? So what are you talking about? What do you think Zaidi's going to do to you? You're going to walk in and say, hello, Zaidi? He's going to say, get out of my life? And he's not going to say that. You know what happened? So she goes and I said, just get over yourself. And she got over herself. She got out of her comfort zone. She goes visit Zaidi. And you know what happens? She starts visiting Zaidi basically every week. and she gets to know him, and he was like the fix-it guy in the assisted living. Like he would like, he's like a handy guy, and he has like a Swiss Army knife, and he does stuff. And then she met like this woman that Zadie keeps company with, kind of like his like, old person girlfriend kind of vibe, And then I'll tell you, what even happened? When her dad came to visit Israel, she says, let's go see Zadie. And her dad, like, doesn't really, and they went and she mended fences between her dad and Zadie. And she did all these things that grandchildren do. She showed Zadie how to make WhatsApp calls, and all this kind of stuff. And all it took was what? For her to just get over herself and get out of her comfort zone, yes? And this is what I'm telling you. This is your year. Nobody cares about, your nervousness and your stresses. You're all fine. We just want to help you. So do whatever it is that you want. This is your time. I'll tell you one more thing. You know what the Gemara says? The Gemara has a great line. The Gemara says, you know how in America there's a rule that you plead the fifth, right? Because you say, I can't say anything on the grounds that it might incriminate me. There's a rule like that, right? But the Gemara has a similar rule, which is, Ein Adam Misim Atzmo Rasha. A person doesn't make himself to be a bad person. What does that mean? That you can't say in a court, like if you say in a court, hey, I did this, no, your words can't convict you. But I'm telling you what the greater sense of that is. A person can't look at themselves as a bad person. Sometimes in life, if there's something that you feel you're not doing the right way, or you can do better, or that you should be doing and you're not doing, what does that build up in your head? You're looking at yourself and you're like, I guess I'm not that good of a person. What does the Gemara say? You cannot have that attitude about yourself. So anything it is that you feel about yourself is incomplete and has to be made whole, you take care of it now, because everybody just wants to help you. That's the second thing. So that was get out of your comfort zone. Let's do the third thing. The third thing is to learn Hebrew, okay? Now I'm going to tell you something. All of you, at some point or another in your life, are going to have to learn Hebrew. This is a reality that you have to face. Some of you might move to Israel, and then you're really going to have to learn Hebrew, so you won't be, I don't know, like these people in America who don't speak English walking around. Like, what kind of people are that, yes? I don't know, what is it? Fedorov, what kind of people? It's like Russian grandmas, like they're stuck and they watch the Russian TV all the time because they don't know American stuff anymore. You can't be that person. If you come to Israel, you're going to have to know Hebrew. But I'll tell you who else has to know Hebrew. You know who has to know Hebrew? Every single imam on planet Earth. And all of you guys are going to be imams, right? And you know that little Yankee is going to come home from second grade, and he's going to have his Chumash homework, and he's going to say, Ima, could you help me read this Rashi? Because I got homework on this Rashi. So who's going to help second grade Yankee? It's got to be Ima. So you got to know that Hebrew. Now I'll tell you a story what happened to me. I think I told this once to somebody. I don't know who. But listen to this. One time I was at my son for Shabbat. And my son, this is one of my grandchildren, is his kid. And he's a tiny little kid. He doesn't talk or anything. He's like 6 months old. He's just a little kid. So I took him out in that thing that you put on, that strap thing, and you put a baby in it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. There's a technical term for it. Yeah, the baby Bjorn is like a wrappy thing, no? Oh, maybe it was that then. Yeah, because the wrappy thing, I don't even, that's too complicated. But, so I go, and it was baby's first time out alone with me, like without his parents. And then we had him face front, because he likes to look at birds and trees. We're walking down the street, and I see a guy at an ATM machine. Now, it was Shabbos. Yeah, I told you the story, Rachel, yeah? The guy's at an ATM machine. He's a Chinese guy. And I say, and the Chinese guy looks worried. I say, Chinese guy, what's going on, man? I mean, I didn't say it that way, but, and he says to me in Hebrew, I'm trying to get money from an ATM. This ATM doesn't work. So I answer him in English. I say, yeah, there's another ATM down the street, go to that one. And he says to me in Hebrew, he says, Ani Sini. That's I am Chinese. He says, Ani lo medaber Anglit. I am Chinese, therefore I do not speak English. My friends, he is a Chinese adult. He does not speak English, but he can communicate and hold a conversation in Hebrew. I want to tell you something I know about this Chinese guy. This Chinese guy did not go to day school. This Chinese guy did not go to some Jewish high school, yes? This Chinese guy, when he came to Israel a year ago to work in construction in Israel, he definitively knew less Hebrew than every single human being in this room. But now he is fluent and he can speak Hebrew to people in the street and ask stuff and hold conversations. If a Chinese person is able to do that, you are able to do that. Now, the thing I know you're saying is, how am I ever going to know Hebrew? I know some of you people here are Americans, you know, and you're struggling with English even. How are you going to know Hebrew? I'll tell you how you're going to know Hebrew. Listen. Do you have classes here where teachers read a text in Hebrew? You do. Are you sitting in that class anyway? You are. I'm telling you, just follow along, read along in the text when the teacher is reading, and you're going to start, okay, Hebrew. I know, I'm telling you, what I feel sometimes is that it's like, I don't know what it's like. It's like when they have on the Israeli news, you know, they say, hey, you know, today in Syria, this guy said this, and he's like yammering in Arabic, and then like after he finishes, then the translator says, this is what it was in Hebrew. And you're listening, and you're like, just get this stuff over with and translate it for me. Like, I don't know this yammering in Arabic. I don't know what that means. Sometimes I feel like the people, you sit in the class while the teacher is reading the Hebrew source, and you're like, all right, you know, just tell me already what it is, yes? You're sitting there anyway. The clock is ticking anyway. Just follow along. Now, I'm going to tell you another thing. I know that what some people do is, as they're explaining the Hebrew, you know what? You write in between in the margins or whatnot, yes? And the tiny little letters over there, and you write the English words, yes? Okay. And then when you read it over, what do you read? You read the English stuff in between the margins over there. So then you're not learning anything at all. You're not even trying to learn Hebrew is what I'm saying here. You're spending the time anyway in class. Just try to learn the Hebrew too. Now I'll tell you how to do it. Listen, instead of writing it in between the margins on your paper, this is what you do for real. Take another piece of paper. Write over there the translation in English. And then later you go over and read it in the Hebrew without all that English sitting in the margins over there. And you try to figure it out. And when you don't know, then what do? You look at your page in the English. And that way you're at least trying to learn some kind of Hebrew over here, yes? You're going to have to face this reality one way or the other. So I'm saying just take care of it already to the degree that you can. Good. That was number 3. Number 4. Number 4 is you have to do chazara. You have to review what you learned during the day. Let's start like this. What does the Gemara say in Masechet Sanhedrin? The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says, Rav Yeshua ben Karcha says, Kol halomed Torah ve'eino chozer. If you learn Torah and you don't do chazara, you're like a person shezoreya who is planting ve'eino kotzer and doesn't harvest. You plant but you don't harvest. What is the concept over here? That planting is part of a process. Another part of that process is harvesting. What you have to understand is The learning that you do in class, when you learn something one time, that is the first step of a process. The expectation in yeshiva learning, the expectation is that when a human being goes to a shiur, that person does not come out of that shiur saying, I understood everything 100%. That person comes out of the shiur saying, I understood the basic gist of what's going on. I have an understanding of what's going on. I will now review, fill in the blanks, and therefore attain 100% understanding. That's part of the process, is the reviewing. How is it that anyone is supposed to remember anything? Unless you have some kind of incredible memory, how are you supposed to remember anything that you learned last week or the week before? The only way to do it is by reviewing. Now you're going to say, when am I supposed to review? I will tell you when you're supposed to review. Do you have this base medrash time? Don't you have these like night base kind of things? Yes? How long is night base? How long is it? 2 hours. 2 hours is a long time, yes? Are there human beings out there who during these 2 hours, like, what should I do? 2 hours is a lot of time to fill. What am I going to do with 120 minutes? What am I going to do with that time? I'm looking for something to do. That's a great time to do chazara. You know the old tradition? What do we say? The old yeshiva folklore is that when you open up a page of Gemara, you look on any page of Gemara, and what do you have on any page of Gemara? There's Rashi and Tosfot framing that page of Gemara. And every single page of Gemara where you look at, there's going to be Rashi, and there's 4 lines of Rashi framing the Gemara. And the old folklore in the yeshivas is like this, that why are there 4 lines over there? Because that means that before you start a new page of Gemara, you have to go through the previous page 4 times. Did you ever see, I don't know if you see this, but this is the old yeshiva way to do it, that every time you review a page of Gemara, you make a little mark on the corner of that page. You make a little line, yes? And then you do 3 lines, 4 lines, for whatever, because you're supposed to do chazara. Do you understand that Judaism has tons of built-in chazara? Hey, anybody here learn Parsha during the week? How are you supposed to learn Parsha? How does Parsha work? Why do you do it? Shnai mikra ve'echad targum. So built into that, how many times are you supposed to read the Chumash text? 2 times. What are they telling you? Built-in chazara right on the spot over there, yes? Now I'll tell you another thing. Are there human beings here in the audience? Did you ever have a book that you read and then you read it a second time? Did you ever have a movie that you liked and you watched that movie more than 1 time? Is that something that happened in your reality? I'm telling you, what does it mean when you go over and read again a book that you read once, or watch a movie again that you watched before? What are you saying about your relationship to that book and that movie? What are you saying? I like that. I want to experience it again. And therefore, you have to have a little bit of chazara somewhere in your schedule. And this is the change between just somebody who learns and they sit in class, and even if they pay attention, and it's potluck. What will be remembered and what will not be remembered? Who knows? But if you do chazara, then you'll really know stuff. That's how anybody knows anything. Oh, I'll tell you a story. What's a nice story about the Rogachover Rav? You ever hear about the Rogachover Gaon? He died in the early 1900s. I don't know if anybody knows. You look up later on Wikipedia, you look up the Rogachover Gaon, there's a picture of him. He's got gigantic hair, yes? He was considered to be a huge genius. What do they say about him? That he wrote tens of thousands of tshuvot. He wrote more tshuvot than any other person in history. He was the #1 writer of tshuvot. He has huge hair. They say, why does he have huge hair? Because he never got a haircut. Why did he never get a haircut? Because he never wanted to stop learning Torah, and he didn't want to sit at the barber and take off his kippah, because then he'd have to stop learning Torah for a little bit. That's why all the pictures of him, he has huge hair. You know, when the Rogachover was asked, they said, Rogachover Gaon, how do you remember everything? You must have a photographic memory. He said, it's exactly the opposite. He says, I have a terrible memory. But because I have a terrible memory, what do I have to do all the time? I have to chazara, do review all the time. That's how I remember anything. Good. That is the story of chazara. Next is going to be number 5. Number 5 is you have to learn something on your own. You have to find something that is not a class, not that someone is teaching you, not something that you have to do, something that you pick for yourself to learn on your own. Why? Because otherwise, if you never learn anything on your own, what are you creating for yourself? You are making yourself a passive consumer of Torah. That you sit there and like Torah gets thrown at you, yes? And you like it, I don't know, you absorb some of it, but you are not actively instigating any Torah learning on your own. So therefore, and I'll tell you what's a good thing, Torah is vast. There's all kinds of stuff to learn in Torah. You got halacha, you got mishnah, you got musar, you got midrashim, you got chumash, you got tanakh, you got all kinds of stuff. Pick one thing that's your thing that you do on your own. Now I'm going to tell you when you're going to learn this on your own. When are you going to learn it? You know in the Beit Midrash, hey, does it ever happen in the Beit Midrash that the teacher gives you like a paper or something and there's like 4 questions or like some chart to fill out or some such thing? Yeah, they do that, yeah? All right, yeah, people, they do that. Okay, I don't do it because, I just don't. But some people who put in the time and effort, they give you like a sheet like that. They do that, yeah? And then what might happen sometime? A kid is sitting in the Beit Midrash like, I finished the sheet. They're like, okay. Now what are you going to do that you finish the sheet and you still have Beit Midrash time? You know what you do? You whip out your personal little Torah thing and you start learning. I'll tell you another thing. Does it ever happen to you that you're waiting for a bus and you're just waiting for that bus? Is that bus going to come? Is it not going to come? I don't know. I'm just waiting. What could you do when you're waiting for that bus? You whip out that little sefer of yours and you read a little bit more. Did you ever notice that they have like mini versions? Do you ever see the mini Chumash with Rashi, the mini Mishnah Brura, all those kind of mini things, yes? Mini Gemaras. Why do they make those mini sizes? Because it's like cute and adorable? Those are meant to fulfill what it says in the Torah. Ubelechtecha baderech. Have something to learn when you are on the road. Hey, you know what happened the other day? Listen to this. A few weeks ago, I went on a fun trip with Midreshet Harova. A fun trip, went to Yad Vashem. I hadn't been there in a bit of time. And they said, hey, Ravon, could you go to Yad Vashem? I'm like, yeah, I'm always down for a trip. It'll be nice. I get on this bus. There must have been 50 Harova kids on the bus. How much could you cram onto a bus? I think like 50. That's official. I was sitting in the front. How long does it take to get from here to Yad Vashem? How long does it take? 20 minutes maybe it was? 20? Half of the bus fell asleep in those 20 minutes. Immediately went into like REM nap time. You know what not one human being was doing on that entire bus? I'm telling you, not one person took out a sefer to learn in those 20 minutes. And I'm saying, you're seminary girls, right? Like, this is your time, yes? If you're not learning on a bus, who's learning on a bus now? Who is it going to be? Some 40-year-old accountant after a hard day at work, dead tired on the subway on the way home? I'm telling you, you're the ones that these mini Sfarim are being written for. So just pick the thing that it is something for you to learn on your own, and you sneak it in those extra times, and the waiting times, and the bus times, and the traveling times, and all that kind of stuff. All righty. Next is going to be what are we up to? Number 6. Okay? Number 6 is ask questions. ask anything that you want to know, you ask. Don't ever be embarrassed to ask a question. You want to hear a real true story that happened? True story, Midreshet Harova this year, true story. There was a student of mine, and the student had to do some kind of public reading in a particular scenario. That public reading was in Hebrew. And she says, I can't do it, I can't do it. I'm like, listen, you're a grown human, you can do it. She says, I can't do it. She comes over to me and she says, listen, I'm having trouble with the difference between a shin and a sin. There's a dot over there, it's confusing. And she says, I feel bad to even say this. I feel that this is a dumb thing. Which one is the shin and which is the sin? I want to tell you something. I felt about that kid, I said, this is a brave kid. This is a kid who's got it together. This is a kid who's not embarrassed to say, I do not know this. Could you possibly help me with this thing? And you know what? We sat for 5-6 minutes, went through it back and forth. There you go, you get it solid. But it took a whole lot of guts to ask that question. And I want to tell all of you here, you know, I don't know, sometimes in class some kid says something, says, I think it's a dumb question. I'm going to tell you right now, don't ever say you think it's a dumb question. I'm going to tell you something that never happens. There is no teacher in Midreshet Harova, and hopefully not on planet Earth, that says that when a kid says something, they think in their heads, what a dumb question. Nobody thinks that. Every time someone asks what is allegedly a dumb question, I say, this is a brave kid. And there's probably a bunch of other kids in the room that they don't have the guts to raise their hands because of peer pressure and I don't know what, and they want to ask the same thing. I'm telling you something. I'm a teacher, and I don't know exactly what you know or don't know. And sometimes I use a term, and it's not fair, and it is a term that you don't know. So you got to ask. I'll tell you, listen to this. A long time ago in Virginia, I was a rabbi in Richmond, Virginia. One time, they said, oh, there's a guy, he's a big Kiruv speaker. You got to bring him. Because at the time, there was a whole lot of Russians moved into Richmond, and they didn't know a whole lot about any kind of Torah things, and they needed to learn basics. Great. So what happens? They say, bring in this big speaker. He's a great speaker, but he speaks in English. Okay, these Russians, they knew some English. It's fine. They come in. He gives them the whole big Kiruv speech, you know, like to flip them, yeah? Very good. Comes out of the speech. A guy comes out. I said, so what did you think of the speech? He says, it was a great speech, really great speaker, but I have one question. I said, what is your question? He says, there's one word he kept on using over and over. I don't understand that word. I didn't ask, but could you tell me what that word is? I said, what is that word? He says, Hashem. I'm like, whoa, so like, what did you get out of the speech? Like, what happened here? What were you thinking when the guy says, you know, we owe it all to Hashem? Like, what were you thinking? Okay, so I'm telling you, don't be embarrassed to ask. Oh, I'll tell you another story. You want to hear a real story? This also happened this year. Listen to this. I was teaching a class, and I see that at the end of the class, there's a girl, she got tears in her eyes, literal tears in her eyes, yeah? Now I'm going to tell you something. As a human being, one of my goals every year is, don't make anyone cry this year. That's, I try to keep to that. But here was a kid crying. I come to her after class, I say, why are you, what? I see that something's not okay. What's not okay over here? What's going on? It's like, don't want to. It's like, come on, just tell me, it's all right, just whatever it is. She says, I'll tell you what happened. She says, you were reading something in class, and it was in Rashi script. And you asked some people like what this is, what that is, and they all answered. And she says, I can't read Rashi letters. I thought no one could read this thing. It looks like, Chinese or whatever to me. No one could read this thing. When I saw that all the other kids could do it, I felt real bad about myself, yes? And she's sitting there. Could you imagine? She's crying that she doesn't know Rashi letters, yes? How old is this kid? She's 18 years old, yeah? And she's crying at this young. So what happens? What do you think, Ariel? I go find a sitter, and in the first page, sometimes they have like that thing that shows the Rashi letters in the regular, yeah? We sit down, half of the letters, even 75%, look more or less the same. There's a couple of bugaboos in there, that Aleph and the Mem Sofit and the Samech, and it's like, some of them, like that Tzadi, like, okay. So it took a bit of time, but you just take care of it, yes? So I'm telling you, this is your time to ask, whatever it is you want to ask. I'm telling you, for real, if there's people here that you're saying, listen, kind of deep down, not sure about God, I don't know about God, yes, no, kind of on the fence about it. If you're saying, I don't know Torah, I don't know, it's really from Hashem, I don't know. This is your time to ask. No one's going to think you're a horrible heretic. No one's going to think you're a bad person. No one's going to think you're dumb at all. All that anyone will think is that you're brave and you have a lot of guts, because that's what you show when you ask a question, yes? Okay, good. That is number 6. Ask your questions. So what do we got so far? You got waking up early, get out of your comfort zone. We said you got to learn Hebrew. You got to do Chazara. You got to learn on your own. And you got to ask all of your questions and not be embarrassed. Last thing. The last thing is try to be in the moment. When you're eating at the YY, sometimes it's breakfast time, and you got that bowl, and that bowl has a whole bunch of hard-boiled eggs in it. And there's a nice pile of hard-boiled eggs. And you know that they kind of have a little bit of moisture on them. It's kind of like dew. And I know some of you are a little bit offended by those hard-boiled eggs. I once saw the guy delivering the hard-boiled eggs. They come in a bucket already peeled. That just made me love him more. Comes peeled in a bucket. You gotta wonder, what's the process? But I know that some of you are laughing about it, but I also know that there's some people underrated in the audience that you like those hard-boiled eggs. Now I'm gonna tell you something. You hard-boiled egg lovers out there, you know what it's like. When you take that hard-boiled egg, you put a little bit of salt on it, and you eat that hard-boiled egg. But I want to tell you something. There's 2 ways to eat that hard-boiled egg. You could either eat it in 2-3 bites and just get it down, or you can take your time and you enjoy that hard-boiled egg. I'm telling you something. When you're eating a hard-boiled egg, take the time, get into it, enjoy that hard-boiled egg. Now listen, and if it's not a hard-boiled egg, when you're sitting at the YY and you go to that salad, make your own salad in the back, and you put together your things, you sit down, you enjoy that salad. Because when it's time to eat, you sit and enjoy and have a good time eating that food, yeah? You enjoy it. But the same thing, when it's time to daven mincha, you go all in and you enjoy that mincha too. I don't know, you know, I want to tell you a secret. You know that there wasn't always a mincha break at Midreshet Harova? I don't know if you know this. This is Harova history. Now I'm telling you Harova history. There wasn't always a mincha break. Some staff people said, we got to put in a mincha break. I was one of them. I said, you got to put in a mincha break. These girls got to be from, you know, they got to have a time for mincha. Don't make them walk out of class or, find the time. Make it easy for them. Even with mincha being so easy, okay, as people on the couch or wherever they go, I'm telling you, when stuff is going on, be in that moment and soak it up. When it's mincha time, you soak up some mincha vibes, yeah? When it's singing time and it's tish time, you sing. You close your eyes, you sing. Oh no, I'll tell you something. That in my class, we like to sing on Rosh Chodesh. We sing. But you know what happens every time? There's some kids, they're not singing. They're videoing the other people singing. I'm like, can we just for a moment enjoy what's happening here instead of documenting it for some future reference? Could we just be in the moment? When you're in a class, when you're in some kind of a shiur, just be in that moment. Learn that Torah and enjoy it and soak it up. When you're sitting in a shiur Klali, just be in the shiur Klali. I know that you got a lot of stuff to do, You got a lot of WhatsApps to reply to. There are shoes out there to be purchased. There's all kinds of stuff to check. I know that. But you understand what you're putting yourself into? You're always going to be distracted. When you're eating, you're half on your phone while you're eating. When you're sitting in a class, you're half on your phone when you're sitting in class. When you're walking, you're half on your phone. When you're talking to somebody else, you're half on your phone. So when are you ever going to focus on anything? You're living a life of constant distraction with only part of your brain focusing on anything. Now listen, I'm a person and I have a phone. I got people I got to speak to. I even got the social media. I'm on Facebook, yeah? There you go. Like old people, I'm on Facebook, yes? Okay. And I check the thing. So you have a time, just like you have a time to savor that egg, and you have a time to savor that mincha. You sit on your phone and you savor, and you think of your responses, and your witty comments, and your hashtags, and your GIFs, or your GIFs, or however you want to pronounce it, and you really focus and do it. And then when it's done, you move on. Don't be a person who you're doing, I don't know what, you're doing something and meanwhile you're blowing up candy or cutting fruit or whatever it is that you're doing at the same time, yeah? And I'm telling you, this is just the key to just living life as a human. Just be, whatever you're doing, just do that thing. Did it ever happen to you, my friends, that you were watching a movie with someone and that person you were watching the movie with was on the phone during the movie, checking emails and whatnot, and you're like, what the heck, we're at a movie, just watch the movie for a minute, yeah? That's what it is. Otherwise, your life is one long distraction. These are my 7 tips. Now listen, if you don't follow these 7 rules, are you still going to be at Midreshet Harova? Sure. Are you still going to be a decent human being? You will still be a decent human being. But I feel that these are the ways to up your game and to be a next level kind of seminary student. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thanks, Rabbi. Rabbi, it's very good.